Hello, I'm Terry David Mulligan, and this is the Terry David Mulligan YouTube channel, which is why they call it Terry David Mulligan YouTube channel. Anyway, two guests for your long weekend. Bruce Allen, maybe the best manager, rock and roll manager Canada ever produced. He currently oversees the careers of Michael Buble, Bryan Adams, Jann Arden, the Offspring, Bob Rock. And we're just going to talk. I'm just going to open up the floodgates. I'm going to ask him about. Actually, I want to know about Red Robinson, the loss of Red Robinson, Gordon Lightfoot, but just the basic nuts and bolts of the music business today, and what's going on. Is it in the dumps? Is it going to work? Is it not? Like that. So that Bruce Allen, and it's his birthday. So happy birthday, happy Bruce. Now, and the second one is Doug Cox, the artistic director of the Vancouver Island Music Festival. This is really a one of a kind festival. Doug's, because he's a musician, seems to get a sense of who would work with whom on a stage. His headliners will tell you where he's at. He starts with Sarah McLachlan on the 14th, and then Ricky Lee Jones on the 15th, and the Brothers Landreth on the 16th. 14, 15, 16 of July, it's the Vancouver Island Music Festival. We'll find how the festival people are doing as well. Next week, we're going to talk to the festival directors from Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Canmore, Vancouver. It's festival time. We need to know. Enjoy. Have yourself a great weekend. Thank you. My name is Terry David Mulligan, and he is Bruce Allen. Hello, Bruce. I know it's kind of daybreak, but you're up and working early. You're talking to what, Helsinki?
Yeah, when you got acts on the road a lot like I do, it's nice to get in here in the morning. I try to get in here around 7:30, and then I can get something done because Mulligan 8-hour shift there. If you're pulling at 8, it's 4 o'clock. They're heading home.
Vancouver at an early morning is a beautiful city.
Yeah, it is. It is, and I got a convertible, and the weather's nice, and I don't mind driving down at all.
All right. you and I last talked. I'm going to assume that you're okay. I asked you, so you're good health-wise. We lost Red Robinson. We last saw each other backstage at the Commodore Ballroom when we had a celebration of life. Just your thoughts now that it's settled on Red Robinson and his place in music in Vancouver and everybody's lives.
I think the turnout was really amazing to see the people that turned out. I hadn't seen a lot of them for years, but we were all raised by Red Robinson when he played on the radio. So it was great to see all those people there. I thought it was really nice, Molly. The speakers were very good. I thought that the stuff that Larry Hennessy did with the shows playing in the background, I thought was very interesting. I thought that was very cool. And the people, there was just a really nice feeling in there. And I know that his family that were there really, really enjoyed it. Thought it was better than it ever could be. And somebody asked me, how come you pulled that off like that? I said, well, there's a key to doing things like this. I said, no meetings. You got to cut out the meetings. We don't want to hear too many opinions. So I remember we made a decision to do this on the Wednesday. Thursday we started. Friday was a holiday. Saturday, Sunday, Monday was a holiday. So we had about 6 days to pull this together, and everybody did, and it was really great. Really, really. But a lot of people. You got to thank people like the White Spot who donated the food, and the Commodore that donated the building. But that's what they all thought of Red Robinson. He was a great asset to this city. And I tell you what, I always have said I wouldn't be in the music business probably if it wasn't for him.
Well, I wanted to ask you, how old were you when you heard Red coming out of your radio?
I would have been probably about 9 or 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you understand what it was, or did it take you a minute to?
Well, it's about the same time when Elvis was starting to get coming on, and I remember my mother was listening all the time, and she liked Elvis a lot. And I can remember her sitting with her watching TV, and when Elvis went on stage, and she'd shudder with her shoulders and say, "Ooh, I just can't look at his eyes." Ooh, wow. And it's just funny stuff in black and white TV, Jeez. Anyway,
that's the effect he had.
Yeah.
We'd never seen anything like that. Nothing.
No, it's unbelievable.
And Well, we'll remember the Red. There's certain ways that we'll remember him, but we carry him in our hearts.
Yeah, you and I have talked. There's something they could do for him. He's got to get something like Jack. Well, there's Wasserman's Beat down there on Homer Street, but Hornby Street. Again, Hornby it is. And I think Red had the Red Theater out there. The Red Theater used to be out in Coquitlam.
Yeah.
And when they took down that sign and said, "No, we're going to change it," I couldn't believe it. Like, you just don't do that, Mulligan.
Yeah.
You just don't do that. You might do it 60 years later, but don't do it, 6
while
years
the guy's
later.
around. Yes.
God.
And so there is, you and I've been talking. There's the state. One of the famous stages of Red Robinson's career was at Kitts Beach, an outdoor stage where bands could play. And you could go to the beach and listen to a band. And Red did his show there. That's the first time he really discovered the power of his radio and the music because 10,000 people showed up.
Yeah. There's the great Paul Revere and the Raiders story. There's the great Bobby Cartola story. These things when he got these acts there, and people they didn't know the people of the city fathers are putting on what was going to happen. They weren't in touch. Paul Revere and the boys show up. It's just packed, and streets are blocked, and people are trying to get down there. And then they remember they couldn't get them out, Terry. They had to take them on the boat out the back, had to row it out to the thing and get across to English Bay and get them out.
A lifeguard boat. That's exactly
a lifeguard boat.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
A Victoria Clinker. All right.
Yeah.
So let's see if that stage at Kitts Beach becomes something.
Well, it's like I say, there's a lot of work to do. As you know, they had the fire, Molly, so they got to tear it down.
Well,
kind of build something that's not going to happen.
It just happens chance that's what's going on. That's a headline, and Red passes away. Let's see if we can remember him in one spot.
Yep. I hope we can. We should.
All right. I'm going to get caught up with you on a couple of things. First of all, the state of the music business these days. I'm thinking Ticketmaster and beyond. Where are we? What's your read?
Okay. My state of the music business is this. As more and more comes along, and streaming obviously has taken over everything, and you can't buy CDs anymore, and vinyl's bigger than CDs, and that's for collectors, really. Our business is a live business. I don't care what anybody says. Our business is a live business. Yes, you can put out records and some people will get it played, but there's so many acts that, people aren't listening to the radio anyway. The radio things are dropping. It's all streaming, Mully, and streaming doesn't make a lot of money. I talked to a friend of mine who just got an award for 1 million plays, and I said, "Boy, what's that worth?" He says, "Nothing." And it is nothing. I bet you probably, and I'm just guessing, Mully, I bet he probably worth 20 grand. Now, if you sold 1 million records, you'd be doing pretty good, but you don't get that with streaming. And so that's forced us all on the road. And that's why we're getting bombarded. There's so many people on the road. It's unbelievable how many shows there are. Yeah. You turn around and people don't even know they're here. I remember I went to Elton John when I was home, and he came in and I saw the show, and somebody asked me what I did on Saturday night. I said I went to see Elton John. Oh, was he here? What do you mean? Was he here? He did 40,000 people twice.
Yeah.
But we don't have that, Mully. We don't know who's here all the time. You got to be on, you got to join something to see all the shows that come through. But boy, oh boy, is it busy. And I mean, that's the thing. That's my hardest part right now. I got Offspring on the road in Europe. I got Adams getting ready to go on the road in America. I got Buble, just got back from the UK. Now he's getting ready to go to Australia. Everybody's working because they have to work. What else are you going to do? This is how we make our living now.
You know who's not working? Frickin' Jann Arden. She's writing a book.
Jann Arden's writing a book, but she always writes a book, but she's always working. She's finished her tour of Canada this year. Now we got a bunch of. She does a lot of jobs for companies and that, to come in and speak. Sure. Actually, she's a good speaker. Gets decent money for speaking. And I know you want to talk about the Ticketmaster thing. I don't know where to come down on this, Molly, because I believe that sometimes, I'm sorry, you just can't afford to go. Yeah. Now, if I sit there as a season ticket holder to Vancouver Canucks and I see the first round, if they ever got into the first round, my tickets would jump to about $210 a game. And I'd watch it go up $400. By the time I got to the last round, I'd probably be paying $700 a ticket. Yeah. Now, you can go or you can't go. And that's just life. And I'm all for the artists getting as much as they can. And when I sit here in this office and listen to people whining all the time, they can't see this, they can't see that, it's too expensive. Well, you got to make your choices. But you know what, Molly? Those buildings and these arenas and these stadiums are filled with people. So somebody found the money,
Somebody somewhere.
Taylor Swift. I mean, nobody. Most of the people go see her can't drive. But how do they get the money? I don't know, but I know how they get the money. Parents are saying, "Here, go have a good time," and me and Mom are going to go out for dinner. See you.
Okay, one thing at a time. Offspring. It caught me unawares. Because I'm not a post punk guy. I've got enough time just to focus on the music that I focus on. Um, I thought that they were done and gone. I thought the band had imploded, and in fact, it took 7 years to get one of the damn albums out. But when it
Yeah.
came out, there was an audience for it.
Yeah. Now this is an interesting story because I was made a vow after the end of my careers with the bands that I didn't want to I didn't want to manage a band again because I didn't want to talk to five guys. I just rather talk to one.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for the last 25 years. And Bob Rock was in making a record with the Offspring. And he called me up. He called me and said, listen, these guys, Bruce, have no management. This is a really good record. He says, I'd like you to hear it. Da, 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 da. He says, I can, Bob is my client. He's got to make some money too. So he says, do you think you can do anything with this? So I said, okay, send it to me. And I sent it to me. And I was not a punk fan. So it's kind of didn't pull me right in. But I got people here who are, and who came out of that, get that time period and liked that music. And boy, did they like this band. So I thought, okay, he got a record deal in America. The kid who's the lead singer has got a PhD, for God's sake. You're not talking to an idiot.
True.
Okay. He's got a PhD.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a funny setup. It's like two guys are actually, him and Noodles are Dexter and Noodles are the guys, right? So I had a meeting with him. Randy Burswick in my office and Sandy Bathgate in my office, who are Randy's he's been with me for 40 years.
Yeah.
And Sandy was a real punker. So she was jumping up and down, and I've never seen her so happy. So we put the thing together and we worked hard on it. And we got a good agency for them. We got a lawyer for them. The record label you turned that around, you got to work with the record labels and stuff like that. And we do, and they worked. I thought they did a good job. Everybody did a good job. They pushed, and everything was in one direction, and the record was good. And now these guys are out there, and Mully, they're phoning me up. Like they phone every couple of shows, and they phoned the other night. They said, "This is unbelievable." They said, "We have never been in stadiums and big rooms like this in our career." And he says, "We're selling out." The solo Berlin last night, 18,000. Like they're shaking their head. And it is working. And there's an act out there where Mully, where ticket was only $60, 65, $70. That's what they get. So it's different, but boy, oh boy, it's been a real fun ride, Mully, to see that happen.
And then they hooked up with Bob Rock, because Bob Rock, I mean, when he first started, he was working with Art Bergman. He knew what punk was all about, man. He knew it, and his ears would hear that. So it took 7 years to get that album out. Anyway, unbelievable.
We just finished a record with Gord Downey. The Gord Downey.
I know that's what I want to ask you.
10 years to get out.
That's what I want to ask you about that project. I know it's a large story. See if you can shrink it down for editing purposes. Bob Rock, he hooked up with the hip, obviously, but then he made a connection with Gord Downey.
He did 2 hip records, okay, over my dead body. I'm not a hip fan. I couldn't stand the hip. I didn't want anything to do with the hip, but he wanted to do it because he enjoyed the music, and so that's how he does it. So he made a couple of records, and they do what they do. The hip, they're a funded Canadian funded band, and they work from here to Newfoundland. So they went out and put out their music and so on and so forth. Yeah. So Gord gets sick. I didn't know over that when I'm making those records that Gord and Bob had connected musically, and kind of were talking, and Gord wanted to, they play everything in the key of C or something, nothing changed, just a jam in C. So so Rock and him sat down and they said, we'd like to do something. And they fiddled around, and the way it started is really, Gord asked, well, do you have any music? And Bob writes music kind of all the time, Terry. No lyrics, but just music. Yeah. So he said about 14, 15 different things. A lot of it, some of it's written, I think, too, by Paul Hyde, because he still connects with him a bit. Sure. And off those records went to Gord. And all of a sudden, like, probably within 2 months, all the songs came back with lyrics and everything. Sure. And so Bob, they talked, and he's not in good shape physically or health wise. So he had to juggle time with they were out on the road touring, or they're out making their own records, and they got things done, little bits and pieces. And it went on for a long time, longer than I knew. I didn't even know it had started really until it's probably had 5-6 tracks done.
And you knew Bob wasn't going to turn away from it.
No. And he got it. He got everything done. He got everything recorded. Yeah. When Gord passed away, he left it alone for a while. He left it alone probably for a year at least. Okay. And then he went kind of back to it and started to put the thing together again and get some work and bring in some players that he wanted. And now we have the record that's out there, and it's Parfait. It's Lester Parfait is people are saying, and I don't know, you probably listened to him more than I did. I think Gord sounds better there with Bob Rock doing that job and a lot of good players behind him than he ever has.
Well, he's free of his character. He doesn't have to play that character. He can be himself.
Absolutely. And Bob got good vocals off of him. It's a really thrilling project. And Bob was talking to me last night. He's the only guy. I mean, this is a record, Terry. There's not going to be a tour. There's not going to be anything. Bob has to carry the ball, and it's kind of funny for him. So he was telling me about his interview last night with Chris Jericho, the wrestler, who's got some kind of a podcast. And of course, he's in that band Fozzy, right? They both grew up in Winnipeg. He just had the greatest time talking and kicking music around with the pro wrestlers and stuff. And he's kind of enjoying doing all that kind of work because he hasn't done that work that often.
Buble, God, my Lord, I made a note here, Australian tour, New Zealand. He's going to end up in Mexico, big stadiums in Mexico at the end of the year. All set out in front of him. And he works a small room beautifully, but he's managed to make the leap to a big, it's tough to do what he does and make the connection with an audience when you're 50,000 feet away from the damn stage. He does.
He has a gift. He has a gift, Mully.
Yeah.
He can shrink a room. And he's really good at it. And he always has been. And I've always said, we have these arguments all the time about the sets and stuff. He says, listen, I said, Michael, you can go up there and sit on a stool with a balloon and sing with a microphone and just sit there. And that's all you need. Why do I need 22 trucks out there going crazy? But he wants all these things to be and help him get more in with his audience and stuff like that. And he really cares. He really cares, Mully. He's tired. There's no doubt he's tired. This last run when he just got out of finished up in Dublin with 2 shows in Dublin. I was talking to him. He was tired, and I think he's glad to be home. But he's got a lot of stuff when he comes home because he's involved in a lot of projects. So you'll see a lot of Buble coming, not in the record side.
I'll remind you of the last not the last conversation, but one of the first conversations I really had with Michael. I'm at the Nelson. I think somebody opened a cigar bar in the Nelson Hotel. So I went down.
Yeah, they did.
At the time I was smoking cigars, and Buble is there on a piano, singing his heart. And after his set, he walks up and he says, "I can't get Bruce to take my calls. What do I do? What the hell do I do? How do I get his attention?" I said, "You have to keep playing hundreds of gigs over and over again, rooms like this every night. He wants to be able to walk into that room and see what you're doing and working. It worked with Adams. It's going to work with you." And
the guy who did it in the end was Foster.
Yeah,
Foster's making a record. He did it at under duress, but a push from Brian Mulroney. So he's making this record, and he phoned me up and he said, "Listen, I'm making a record on Michael Buble." I said, "Yeah." He says, "You know him?" I said, "Yeah, I know him. He played in some of the clubs I'm involved with, and yeah, he's a good singer." And so on. He said, "What kind of record are you making, David?" He says, "I'm making a romance record." I said, "A romance record? What's that?" He says, "Well, romance songs. I think romance has gone out of the business." And I said, "Well, okay." He says, "Are you interested?" I says, "Yeah, I'm a bit interested. How much?" I'm betting on Foster now. I says, I'm interested." He says, "How much?" He says, "About 75%. He says, "I'll tell you what, I want to get you to 100. Let me send up the music." So he set up the music, all rough mixes on it. And I sent it then to 3 promoters. They thought I was making a joke. "Now you're kidding. You guys singing all these standards." And I said, "No." And I said, "I think this guy can do something." And my friend Don Fox, in New Orleans, got involved. My friend Carly Pope in the UK got involved, and the Canadian companies up here for Live Nation got involved, and everybody got behind it. And I can remember Don Fox when put his first shows on in Phoenix. And he says, because he didn't know, he just didn't know what was going to happen. He says, let me give you the counts. Here we go. First weekend, Phoenix, 19. Okay. San Diego, 16. Oh, here's a big one, Bruce, because it's close to Vancouver. Seattle, 61. Oh, great. And but he pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. It was in little theaters, Molly. And we just blew that thing up, man. We blew that thing up. And it's because of Michael Bublé's show that he puts on. People come, and it's really, really something to see. Great music, great songs. Always had great songs. Foster picked great songs, and he did. And then he wrote some great songs, but he's a real entertainer, Molly. And a lot of people have lost that.
But you had to connect. You two had to connect. You had to connect.
Yeah.
It would never. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Adams.
Yeah.
The words tired and Adams, do they ever happen?
No, he's unbelievable. He's like a little engine that could all the time. He's always working. He wants to work. He loves working 2 weeks every month. And we're scrambling around getting dates all the places. He'll go anywhere. Even if it's a war zone, he'll do something. But we got him going into South Africa. Is getting booked right now, and he's going to Dubai, and he's going to places like that. And he's actually going to come in and do we haven't put the tickets on sale yet, but he's going to do some secondary markets because our tour in Canada was very, very good. And we thought maybe we should do some secondary markets. They're fun to do, So we're going to do some of those later on, late this year, early next year.
The thing about it is he's a rock and roll guy. That's what he does. And whatever rock and roll is changed, is warped so badly. I'm hoping it'll, as you know, the entire business comes full circle. It's cyclical. His times, like vinyl disappeared. All of a sudden, vinyl's back. I believe as long as Bryan wants to play, he will. That interest in his career and his songs and his style of songs will eventually come back.
Yep, I agree 100%. And it's really something. We just played down on Stagecoach with the Cowboys.
Wow.
Okay? And it was fantastic. He didn't know what was going to happen. We argued about it, but he went and did the show. He got off that stage. He was stunned. 30,000 people crowded into that area where they had to get to, and they sang every song, and he couldn't believe it because it isn't just Cowboys. It's a lot of young people, Mully, that a lot have rediscovered stuff, and they're not getting dragged around the rap and that scene over there. They're somewhere else, and they're listening to music, and it's really thrilling to see. I mean, I had a girl the other day who was 14 years old, and she talked to her mom, and her mom talked to me, and she discovered Backman Turner Overdrive, and she's playing around the house playing BTO, for goodness sakes. I thought, wow.
Well, I see Adams is heading for South Africa. Will you go with him?
Yeah, probably.
Have you been there?
Yep.
Okay.
3-4 times.
When's the last time you were in Russia?
That's with Adams. I never played Russia with anybody but Bryan. That was probably in the 80s.
I wonder if you'd recognize it today.
I don't want to go there to try to recognize it, to tell you the truth.
Okay, a couple of things. Your reaction to the loss of Gordon Lightfoot?
I didn't know Gordon at all, except for Tears Are Not Enough, Molly, and you remember that's probably where I met him, and I hadn't talked to him much after that. I think it's a huge loss, massive, massive talent. I went to see an Elvis thing last night, and a guy put on a show. A guy had a thing at the film festival theater to put on. He made a thing on Elvis, a history of Elvis, and put it on. And as we walked out, what he did is he had Lightfoot. Elvis singing Early Morning Rain. He did a very good job of that.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, that's a real classy move. There's a picture of it. They went to picture it over. It was just Lightfoot sitting there and Elvis singing Early Morning Rain. I thought, that's really cool, man. That's really cool. Massive talent. Probably one of the best writers Canada's ever produced.
Yeah. And would go back and rewrite a song over and over and over again until he got it exactly how he heard it in his head.
Yep.
And got heckled by his band. Backstage, this band, they said they were so tired of hearing, "Oh, Gord, we love Gord." Let me tell you. Anyway, by the way, we're doing this midweek, but it is your birthday on Friday.
Yeah, coming up, TikTok. I look at that a lot, Molly. Believe me, I've never cared about my birthday, but I mean, I'm 78 years old and I'm still doing this. What am I insane? But hey, Molly, I'm still winning. I still like it. I got a lot of young people here that keep me young, and I'm happy with it. So it's just interesting.
But I believe, like you, like you and I have probably that in common. I don't even know this. I'm just guessing, but as long as I keep my brain going, as long as I keep pushing forward, because Meg keeps saying, "Why are you working so hard?" Well, just because I can, because it
Again,
still works. Yeah,
yeah, and you don't hate it, so
yeah.
that's the key too.
And
It's not like going to work, Molly.
you'll know when it's time to step off.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. Well, I hope you celebrate well, and I hope you have a great year. And and I'm tired of losing friends along the way, but it goes with the job now. And now
Yeah,
at our
yeah,
age, yes.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Molly, I'll hang on as long as I can for you. How's that?
Thank you, Bruce.
Take care. Great to talk to you, Molly.
What's your official title?
I'm the artistic director and the
He
executive.
is, in fact, the artistic director, and anything else you want to call him. He can make up his own titles as he wants. Doug Cox, performer, singer, songwriter, producer. Although I don't think you're doing a lot of playing right now. Wait a minute. No, you did have a one-off, didn't you? Just recently.
Yeah, I just did a tour with Linda McRae. We have a brand new CD out. So we just did, Linda lives in Nashville. So we have to plan things carefully, but we just did 2 weeks in BC and we had a great time.
And what is the name of that album, sir?
It's called Beyond the Great Pause.
You like to find yourself in the company of like-minded string individuals. I know you lean string, although you're a horn guy. You can tell from the booking, you like a little bit of everything. But you have a life on the same stage that they play, which makes your lineup infinitely different because you're coming from a different perspective, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I spend the time I'm not working on the festival, I spend working as a producer and as a musician. And something I did consciously this year was I didn't go to any of the music conferences. And I tried very hard to book a non-showcase conference music festival because I'm finding that more and more of the festivals are usually ending up with very much of a similar lineup because they all go to the same places to book their festivals. And that's not the way it used to be. You know, I'm old enough, I could say that all the time now, I guess, but it used to be that you would kind of go off into the woods and explore music and discover musicians and find them and bring them to your festival. And frankly, that's a much more fun and interesting way to do it.
Doug, let me just tell folks, we're talking about the Vancouver Island Music Festival, July 14 through 16. Vancouver Island Music Festival, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday lineups are fantastic.
Thank
For
you.
example, the headliner on the Friday night is Sarah McLachlan. The headliner on Saturday is Ricky Lee Jones. And Sunday, it's the Brothers Landreth. And all of them have stories, fabulous stories. And then the surrounding players are just as good, just as engaging. But before we get to your lineup and your festival, right in front of us, 2 stories. The loss of Gordon Lightfoot. Did you cross paths? Did you share a stage with him?
I never did, and I regret that. But I did. The first songs I ever learned as a musician were Gordon Lightfoot songs, and they were taught to me by my older sister. And we would go camping, and 2 of my sisters played guitar, and we'd sit around and play Gordon Lightfoot songs. So he's in my DNA, you know, like so many Canadians. I never got to see him play. I never crossed paths with him, but I still felt this deep connection just because they were the first songs that I learned.
I was doing a conversation with Bruce Coburn and had to Zoom him back and say, overnight we lost Gord. Just give me your thoughts on that. And my last question was, do you think that Gord exemplified the sound of a country, the sound of Canada? Is it possible? And he gave me I've been editing it. It's a long answer, but basically he was saying, yes. And it comes because we didn't initially, as Canada opened up in those first 50 years, 60 years, 100 years, we didn't see ourselves as conquerors. We saw ourselves as part of the fabric of Canada, the natural wildlife around us. and I believe that we're not the conqueror. We saw ourselves as that, and that's what you're hearing in his music.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that completely. He's also was a surprisingly sophisticated songwriter. His chord progressions were really interesting.
Yeah.
The forms of his songs were really interesting. They weren't just verse, chorus. They were all quite different. Like Bruce Cockburn, actually. So you can see that
Yeah.
perhaps as part of the Canadian songwriter history too. I mean, if you look at Joni and Neil, and we've got some pretty sophisticated writers.
Joni, Neil, yes, Leonard Cohen, all of that.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing is that on this very morning, it was announced that one of the greatest songwriters ever finally is inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Willie Nelson, who just turned 90.
Oh, I didn't hear that. That's
how long it took. 20 years, too long to get to the songwriter, Willie Nelson.
Yeah, it's fantastic. He deserves.
Alison Brock said on the weekend on CKUA, oh man, it was, I'm sorry, it's gone now. It was she was something about, if for no other reason, he should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for writing Crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah, he deserves every award you could possibly get in the music world. I think. And it's good. It's good that he's seeing that before he goes, right? Because he's 90 now.
Yep.
One more thought about Gordon Lightfoot that I just noticed this morning that really struck me was Billy Joel was singing a Gordon Lightfoot song on Facebook this morning, just talking about how deeply he was affected by Gordon Lightfoot. Billy Joel.
Oh, Billy Joel. Yes, I saw that.
That struck me as like this guy reached everybody, you know. So that just really struck me as odd, actually, but it just shows how many people he touched with his music, right? I mean, Tony Rice,
sure.
as well. If you're a bluegrass fan, he just worshipped Gordon. So yeah, I mean, we're so lucky to have lived at this time when all the best of the best musicians were around, right? Pretty incredible.
So, Mr. Artistic Director, let's get to it. Vancouver Island Music Festival. Courtney Comox, July 14th through 16th. Some of the stages are so small. They're surrounded by a small cathedral of trees, just enough space for an audience and a stage, and then the boreal forest.
Yes.
It's phenomenal to see the artists that you see in settings like that, usually in songwriting circles and things. Friday, AV in the inner circle, AV being Anne Vreen, right?
Yeah, from Edmonton. Fabulous. I think almost all woman 6-piece orchestra, but I think they're bringing a bass player with them maybe, and that's probably a guy.
To be followed by Nikki D and the Sisters of Thunder, all female, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and Nikki D was here last year as part of the wonderful all-women's blues review that Shakira Seata put together for us. Nikki D is the only female sacred steel slide guitar player that I'm aware of.
Wow.
And she's wonderful. Everybody at the festival fell in love with her last year. She's one of those people that just makes friends with everyone. So we thought we'd bring her back, and she's very excited to be opening.
And of course, we don't have to explain who Sarah McLachlan is. It's just that after that incredible, I saw the first steps. I did the first interview with her for Much Music, and I still have it. I play it once in a while. I ask her the question, what do you want to do? What is it that you want to do? You've moved from Halifax all the way to the other coast. I just want to write songs for people that they like. That was her opening statement. And so now Sarah McLachlan is a world famous name and has established herself as a force, as a voice. Which Sarah has Sarah got a new album coming? We got new music. What do you think?
Not that I'm aware of. She's coming to perform at the festival as a duo. So it's going to be her and a cello player, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And she's going on early enough. She's playing at 8:30 on Friday night. She was kind enough and smart enough to recognize that because it's just the perfect time. It's twilight time for her to come out.
I noticed also that like Ricky Lee Jones and Brothers Landreth are not the last thing on stage. So
No,
you've thought this through.
yeah, we always do. We always do it that way because we lose a good chunk of our audience for the last act.
Yeah.
We've had, like, when Bonnie Raitt played the festival, she went on at 11. And we had quite a few angry patrons because they were ready for bed. So we've learned to put the headliner on and then have a dance party afterwards for the people that want to stick around. There's usually a few thousand that do, but it just works better, you know.
And following Sarah McLachlan are the brothers Blackburn. They're not called that,
Yes.
they're just Blackburn.
Yes, yes. And for folks who don't know them, they are, these are my words. They probably hate this, but they are Canada's Neville brothers.
Oh.
And they have a deep history in Canada because their family came to Ontario through the Underground Railway.
Yeah.
And their father is quite a famous musician in Toronto. And the brothers have gotten together with a couple of other musicians, and funk, blues, jazz, gospel, soul, like they
I don't have to tell you this, that families, siblings make glorious harmony together. Well, you think about, of course, the Everly brothers, but if you grow up together and you have that history as a family, it shows itself in the music. It's phenomenal.
Absolutely. And it's funny because on Saturday, opening up the evening stage is a duo called the Brother Brothers.
Yeah.
And they're identical twins from the United States. And the closest thing you can compare them to is the Everlys or the Louvin brothers.
Good.
Their brother harmony and Simon and Garfunkel, even though they weren't brothers, their harmony is just to die for. So they're another family group.
And then I hate to rush you along, but we just got to get through this incredible menu. My pal, I've known him a long time. We've both known him a long time. Roy Forbes, BIM, a fellow broadcaster on CKUA radio, and he's coming to do one of his special albums.
Yes, he's coming to perform the Thistles album, which I'm really excited about because I loved that record when it came out. It was as important as the Gordon Lightfoot stuff was to me, and I was so thrilled because I know Roy's been fighting back and forth between not wanting to be called BIM anymore and wanting to be considered to be contemporary. And when he agreed to do that one record for us on the main stage, I just thought that is so cool. I'm going to try and do that every year now with a classic
Very
album.
cool.
And then he'll do his other stuff too during the weekend. So he'll do his current things as well.
And Doug Cox, Vancouver Island Music Festival, July 14 through 16 in Courtney Comox. Fantastic. The stages are phenomenal. The tents are phenomenal. The little cathedral stages in the forest are phenomenal. And then there's Ricky Lee Jones, who's totally phenomenal.
Yeah,
and
she's coming with a 7-piece band.
She seems to be in a good space, Doug, because she's come full circle to her original producer, of course, and has an album just came out.
Right, and she's coming with a 7-piece band, which I'm very excited about. So I've been back to listening to her whole catalog of music, and I've always loved her music, and of course I loved her hit records, and then she kind of fell off a little bit, but every time I came across something, it was like, wow, and if you go back and listen to her catalog, she's a heavy artist, and so I'm thrilled that she's coming to the festival this year. And there's going to be a little bit of a reunion. I doubt this will happen on stage, but folks perhaps don't realize that Daniel Lapp and Rick May, who both live in Victoria, were both in Ricky Lee's band at one point in time. And they're both going to be at the festival performing with other groups. So I think part of the reason she agreed to come was because she just wanted to see those guys.
Wow, nice.
But who knows what that'll lead to.
I'm thrilled to see Daniel Lapp on stage anywhere, anytime, any place. He is one of my go-to guys musically. I really love what he does, and I follow him religiously. So let me see. So Ricky Lee Jones with a 7-piece band outside in the summer. Then Dave Alvin and Jimmy Dale Gilmore with the Guilty Ones. There is a package.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't know them, you should. And again, I'm just really excited that they're coming. I mean, that's just stellar. We've never had Dave Alvin at the festival.
And Allison and I, when we fundraised for CKUA, the one record we always play is Dave Alvin, Highway 61. It's
Right.
a wicked shuffle, and a great reworking of a Dylan song. And Jimmy Dale Gilmore, we know as being one of the great Texas troubadours and songwriters.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and they've done at least one record together that's really great too.
Galactic out of New Orleans. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
That's the end tonight.
That is the jam band, the funk band out of New Orleans, featuring Stanton Moore, who is easily one of the world's greatest drummers. Most drummers worship Stanton and what he does.
If you're doing New Orleans music, you better have a drummer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who knows what they're doing. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful Saturday night. Fantastic. Sunday, Jack Semple Band. Angelique Francis, is she bringing her family with her?
Yes, she is. Yeah.
Thank you.
So her dad and her sister.
Horn sections are her sister.
Yeah. And her dad plays drums.
Yeah. And writes the tunes with her.
Yeah. And she's never been this way before either. So it's going to be a real discovery for people.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and she plays a wicked stand-up bass. And she was on our Juno couch this year in Edmonton, and it was fabulous. It was really good. And then you finish with then the Brothers Landreth, which is a story in itself. Look at this story. I've been following those guys. I saw them at the Edmonton Folk Fest, and I turned and I went, "It's Little Feat. It's Little Feat."
Yeah.
As it turns out, after interviewing them, that's what they were listening to at home with their dad Wally and Bonnie Raitt and all that stuff. So then they meet Bonnie at the Winnipeg Folk Festival. They're not sharing the same stage, but she likes what she hears on that stage, and she goes to them and says, "If you have any tunes, send them my way." It took 7 years before the brothers had a song that they felt was worthy of Bonnie Raitt and made up mind. They sent it to her. 2 years passed. And then they get a phone call from buddies in, I think it was in Nashville, saying, "We actually are playing one of your songs in the studio today. We're recording it with Bonnie Raitt, made up mind." And then they got another phone call saying, "And it's the first single off her new album."
Right.
And then, of course, she won the 3 Grammys, one for that song. And then the Byron Bay Festival, and she thanked them, of course, on stage, on camera. And then they meet at the Byron Bay Festival in Australia. They go on the Saturday. She comes on the Sunday. They stick around and go on stage with her.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All of that history going to show up with the Brothers Landreth on your stage.
Yeah, and they've kind of been one of our house bands. Like they've played our main stage. This will be their 4th time, I think, on the main stage. And they are true musicians and true brothers. One of the things I love about them, I just got a text from Dave Landreth, who's the bass player and singer. And usually I get a text from artists and it starts off as conversation and then it gets to the point of whatever they want. Dave's asking me if I've heard the new Dr. John record. And that's all he wanted to talk about. And I really appreciate that because, like you, I'm a total music geek, and it's really nice to just talk musician to musician like that, especially with a band who I admire so much. That they are truly one of Canada's finest bands.
Now, here's where I'll step aside for a second. Those are just what came on this one sheet, but other artists playing. Give me half a dozen quick sketches of 6 artists that we can also expect to see.
Okay, well, I want to mention closing the festival, Curtis Clear Sky and the Constellations, who are a wonderful Indigenous funk band from British Columbia. Oh boy, where do we start? There's a really great classical jam band called the Warp Trio coming from New York. They're a multicultural group, and they can play the crap out of anything that's classical, but they also are real jammers. So I'm really excited about that one. That's going to be a group that people will discover for sure for the first time. I already mentioned the Brothers. If you're into old time music, we've got 15-year-old prodigy Nora Brown coming from New York, who is just a fabulous old time banjo player. Dongyang Gazupa with Mei Han are coming from Korea, and they call themselves a heavy metal band, but they have like a hammer dulcimer player, and she's one of the best you've ever seen. So I don't know if it's heavy metal or not.
How about Burn Stick?
Burnstick, of course, Jason from Manitoba, who's a fantastic slide player with his wife, and they do sort of singer-songwriter slidey stuff, which, as far as I'm concerned, is really as good as it gets. Sprig of That is a really interesting group from Portland, Oregon. They have the only female tabla player that I've ever seen.
Okay.
It's guitar and fiddle and tabla, and they're one of those sort of new music groups that actually really truly works,
I have one more for you. Liam Doherty.
Yes, Liam. He's
How old is he now?
He's 17 now. And his new record, I got to produce his new record, and it's coming out, and it's just going to kill people. He's playing lead blues guitar as good as anyone I've ever heard in Canada. And he's also a great songwriter. So it's kind of like Nick Drake meets the blues, if you could imagine. And his voice has changed now. So the first album we did together, his voice hadn't even changed yet. And then he made that record, won a bunch of awards, and then his voice changed about 2 months later. So the record became completely defunct, So this new one's coming out in June, and it's just going to floor people. And I'm thrilled he's coming with his band. And
our last geek out is Daniel Lapp Electro. They've been there before. Daniel's known for, of course, great fiddle playing, and his trumpet work, usually sitting in like with 5440, etc., whatever. But this is a band. What are they doing?
Well, this is a band that played together in Victoria 25 or 30 years ago. Rick May is the bass player as well. They're kind of like pre-hip hop, but they are actually hip hop meets jazz. And Daniel mostly plays the trumpet in that band. So it's trumpet, bass, I think percussion and keyboards. And it's sort of jammy, acid, jazzy, hip hop kind of stuff.
Okay.
They were a real popular band back in their day in Victoria. They used to play Steamers once a week, and they used to play Spinnakers, and they used to play all over the place. They got back together to play Rifflandia in Victoria last year.
Yeah, sure.
And then decided they want to do more things. So we're thrilled to have.
What night's he playing? Do we know?
Sorry. I don't
never
know.
mind. It's okay, sir. We shouldn't not talk about Jack Semple simply because maybe we start to take him for granted because he has been so good for so long.
Yes. Last year, Jack played our festival, but he only played acoustically.
Yeah.
And then I saw him at the Toronto Blues Summit last year with his electric band, and it just reminded me he is Canada's Jeff Beck. Like he does things on the guitar that nobody else can do, and he's as good as anybody. Probably hasn't gotten his due because he's from Saskatchewan. So if he moved to the States, he'd probably be really well known these days. But yeah, one of the best guitar players around for sure.
So here's the big deal, Mr. Creative Director, Artistic Director. Tickets. How hard do we have to push, or does it sell out on its own?
Well, that's a hard one. It's different every year. We are anticipating a sellout this year, but there's still tickets right now, and you can get them at islandmusicfest.com. And day passes, I think, are about to go on sale. We have a very limited number of day passes as well within the next week or so.
Sure.
We have 10,000 people a day that come when we're sold out. So it's a small town, big sized festival basically. And we try to keep it limited to that because it's comfortable for everybody. And that's a real important part of our festival too. We are definitely a family festival. We want people to feel very safe, and they do at our festival, and we don't want that to change. So we're not going to let it grow any bigger than that for sure.
I think the key to it, besides Courtney Comox and the trees and the staging, is you and your booking. I'm fascinated. I always want to know what you're up to. Now we know. Details again at islandmusicfest.com.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Doug.